Us for the weekend, and also teaching a class that I'm attending on PACT, which I'll let you...
Which is a psychobiological approach to couple therapy.
There's a mouthful, but it's a wonderful training. I highly recommend it to anybody, and he's all over the country and in Europe and all over the place, so catch him if he's close to you. And he also just wrote a book that I love, which is Love and War in Intimate Relationships, along with Marianne Solomon. And your new book, Wired for Love,
Wired for Love, January 2012.
All right, 2012. I'm hoping to read it earlier than that. I hope. But great, and I highly recommend those too. So we thought we'd just take a chance to interview Stan a little bit on all sorts of interesting topics.
People ask me many times, does this approach take in the multicultural aspect of, and because this is not a one-size-fits-all. But when we're working with the body, as you and I do, and working, with basically the autonomic nervous system, procedural memory, and so on, we're dealing with the face, we're dealing with the eyes and the voice. That is cross-cultural. I mean, people look unhappy the same all over the world.
The expression.
Whether they're angry, whether they're unhappy, whether they're sad. And so that's what we work with. We work with what we see. We work with what is there on the body, not so much with a prescribed idea of what people should do. And, this is where I think working bottom up goes back to the phenomenological approaches, working existentially, or the humanistic existential. In this sense, we're basically taking what we see in the moment by moment, and we're working with that. Adding to that new things now we understand about neurobiology and reading faces and so on. So I think from that point of view, in terms of people being happy, I think we can work cross-culturally. In fact, many of the people I'll work with will speak in their native language.
Yes, I have that. I do have.
And you and I will have to, go on what we see, not what we hear in terms of the words. But that's where it's at. It's what the body's doing, it's what the face is doing, what the voice is doing.
I used to say my clients just had to have a brain and a nervous system, and that would, as long as they brought that to the session, would be okay.
That would be creepy.
So usually they've got that. But I'm curious about the attachment part of it. I mean, I haven't found that many differences, even though I'm sure different cultures have a lot big variance on how they do parenting and what they value in parenting.
And they have big difference.
How tactful they are, or how,
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there are certain cultures I won't get into, but certain cultures that don't do a lot of contact maintenance or proximity seeking.
Right.
Although I think universally there is a proximity seeking movement when we experience a crying baby, a distressed person, but or there's not the eye contact in the same way, or the distance, closer, further.
Right.
But in couples. In that system, we see very similar things, because this is not about strangers and not about social norms. This is about intimacy. This is about taking care of one another, taking care of one another's distress, taking care of one another's happiness, responding, signal response, and that's really the attachment system. Is I signal, and then I expect you to respond in some way. And that's what we're looking at between two people. I think if you're doing group therapy or you're working with a family, that's a little bit different. But with couples, I think you can really rely on
a lot more crossover.
Much more.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
This is, remember I said before that our brain naturally gravitates towards words. Yeah. Even though we're highly visual animals.
But the tone of the word.
The tone of the words, but words themselves.
Yeah.
So a lot of therapists don't know that if they drop paying attention to the words, they think they're going to
anything else left.
They think they're going to lose the story.
Yeah.
And I encourage people to actually try this, because if you don't listen to the words but you're paying attention to the music, not the lyrics, we take it in. People are surprised by this. They actually hear the content without focusing on it.
Yeah. Because the body's broadcasting it in a nonverbal way.
But also the brain is biased towards picking up words and content. So there's we don't need to focus on it so heavily. In fact, actually, we have to be careful of the opposite. To be careful of being too sucked in
absorbed,
and not paying attention to the other part. So anyway, it's an interesting little tidbit for what it's worth.
There's something that I've been noticing when you're really including the body focus and these more sub-psychological,
Right.
nonverbal cues that you're getting from someone. And even if you sort of bring their attention to it and you engage their curiosity, even if they're talking about the past, but you keep bringing their focus into the present, it's almost like they shift into another way of even experiencing themselves. There's sort of this intrinsic healing
Yes.
orientation that starts to take over. And I think that's something that's really rich for therapists to learn how to do. And how do we articulate that to help therapists know how to move into that sort of what's arising in the moment. And that's sort of almost like the body's in charge of the session.
Right.
Or the attachment system in charge of the session.
Right.
And then how do we interface with that in a way that really helps that
That's part of the
evolve
challenge of the
yeah.
training of therapists, I think.
Yeah.
Moving away from, not that theory is an important, theory is very important,
Yeah.
but the teaching of theory and skills and the actual experience of being with another person in the room and working intersubjectively, that's a hard thing, but that's part of the challenge, I think, of training.
I know,
therapists.
but there's like a palpable shift. It's a palpable shift when this intrinsic part of someone unfolding and their own creativity and their own self-regulation and their own ability to even interactively regulate, but it's like really in the present moment. It's like a discovery process of what's happening each.
And can you see the shift?
Yes.
Where do you see it?
I feel it. It's like it goes from a sort of a conceptual or a normal kind of conversational exchange about history or story or complaints about the relationship or whatever, and there's something about bringing their attention to what's happening in their body. It's like a state shift. And then it's like almost their body takes over the healing process. And then I feel like my job is to be with them, be
Right.
present with them,
Right.
but I'm not really managing anything. I'm like really just kind of being the midwife, but they're having the baby.
I was going to say, they couldn't do it without you, though.
No, I think I'm an important, like for the holding environment or whatever you'd want to call it, I'm an
Right.
important facilitator,
Yeah.
right? So I'm not devaluing that. But really there's a shift from me interacting a certain way to something is arising in them moment by moment
Yes.
has this intelligence in it,
Yeah.
that's going towards health,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then I feel like then my job becomes more about like kind of keeping that on track.
But I think this is very important because there are a lot of people today who want to do this by themselves. And I'm not. I mean, I love mindfulness meditation, and
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
But there are a lot of people who I think would like to do this, by themselves, and yet I think it can only really be done though with another person who is skilled like you,
Right.
to be there.
Presence to presence, body to body, something.
Yeah, it's only
together.
done with another person. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's
Yeah.
done by yourself.
It's very powerful. It's the interaction.
Yeah.